The 410, the little tiny shotgun that can get it done. We're going to talk about that as a survival option today. I've done an entire episode on the 410. I'm not one to risk my life on nostalgia, but I am going to throw out there my very first firearm was a 410. It was a bolt-action Mossberg that one of my uncles, who I don't think was into guns, somehow got that gun. I don't know how. Gave it to my other uncle. I don't know if it worked when he got it. He fixed it up and gave it to me. I hunted all kinds of stuff with that shotgun, from waterfowl to deer to small game, because that's what I had. That being said, I'm not one for nostalgia. It's not the gun that I'm going to grab if my house is burning down. But it was my first gun. I have quite a bit of experience with a 410. Now, I've talked a lot about the versatility of the shotgun. Does that apply to the 410? Because I'm mostly talking about 12 and 20 gauge. What about the 410 as a survival option? Well, that's what we're going to dig into today. So grab your e-tool and get ready to dig in. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, survival, the right way with Almighty God at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host. You guys probably know my background: military, law enforcement, private security, contracting, hunting. Bio bullet points in the show notes. Let's just dig into the 410, shall we? I've done a whole episode on the 410 as a caliber, so I'm not going to rehash a bunch of that out. But it's a shotgun, right? And it's got a lot of the versatility of a shotgun. Not as much. You're not going to find as much variation in rounds as you are going to find for a 12 gauge. It's one of the big three, right? It's probably the third most popular behind, 12, 20, and 410. You got your 16, your 28. Those are even less common and popular nowadays than the 410. The 410 is often considered a youth shotgun for good reason. It's got less recoil. It's not super easy to hit targets with it because it's got the least amount of pellets, but it's got low recoil. So at least they're going to shoot it, right? So it's good for that. And I think that sometimes pigeonholes it into, it's just a baby caliber. It's like it's just a youth caliber. But a lot of expert, like people for pheasant hunting and stuff, really like it because it's low recoil, light, handy shotguns. So it's not just a youth caliber. Also, it saw a bit of a resurgence, I would say, in the mid-aughts, the mid-2000s, with the rise of the notorious, infamous, gimmicky tourist judge. But one of the cool things that came out of the tourist judge is there became a lot more defensive rounds for the 410 than there was prior to that. The judge, and then Smith & Wesson came out with their governor. Now we got the Rossi Brawler. But that was kind of a resurgence. That really wasn't a thing. Before that, you may have found some buckshot rounds. There was obviously slugs and some buckshot rounds, usually triple-aught buck, for the 410. But you saw all these specialty rounds, like mixed loads of disc rounds and buckshot. You got a lot more variation in those kind of rounds. And although I'm not big on you EDCing, they might have a place, but I'm not big on you EDCing a tourist judge. I'm not telling you to do that, right? I don't think that's a logical thing for most people in most situations. You do what you want. It's better than you having no gun. But the fact that you have those rounds, they're only going to be more effective, easier to aim, more velocity generally out of a proper 410 shotgun. So one of those self-defense loads, the disc rounds, right, out of a proper shotgun, a shoulder-fired, reasonable rate of fire shotgun, that's going to add some more versatility to the 410, and it's going to be a lot more versatile than it would have been 20 years ago. Okay, now, when I'm talking about this for survival, I think unless it's just what you have, the only things that make sense for this are going to make logical sense, other than it's just what you have, are going to be pumps and semi-autos. Why? Reasonable rate of fire. Yeah, lever action is so hot right now. There's no reason for a lever action 410 other than you just think it's cool. They generally weigh more, and they're going to be slower and more complicated than a pump action and cost more. Get mad at me if you want, but that's just true. There's no logical reason for you to have a lever action 410 other than you just like lever actions, because a pump is going to have probably less moving parts, simpler, more rugged, more reliable, more affordable, faster. So if you love lever actions, that's fine. But logically, it doesn't make a lot of sense here. So pumps or semi-autos. Yeah, side-by-sides are super cool, and they would be great for a 410 for a bird gun. But what if you have to face down 4 dudes? A side-by-side's probably not what you want. It's not like Hollywood where they're just going to give you time to reload just because you're the good guy. It's not how real life works. So pump or semi-auto. Plus a good side-by-side, unless you get some Turk nasty clone, a good side-by-side 410 is going to cost you more than a decent pump 410. So pump or semi-auto. I'm going to throw that out there for this, was what I'm thinking of. If you have something else, you do the best you can with what you have, where you're at. But I'm thinking pump or semi-auto. Let me talk about one of the major advantages. Like, why would I do this when the 12 gauge and the 20 gauge exist? One of the downsides of the shotgun, a lot of the reason people don't think it's a good survival choice, is the ammunition is heavy and bulky. And it is, right? 100 rounds, 4 boxes of 25 rounds each of 12 gauge is quite a lot of size and weight if you're talking about carrying all the other, survival supplies on your back. 100 rounds of 12 gauge is pretty big and bulky. 20 gauge, less so, but still pretty big and bulky. 410, a full box, 25 rounds of 410 is way smaller and way lighter. So that is the major advantage here. And for a lot of the things I talk about shotgun, one of the main advantages of the shotgun is putting food on the table. I wouldn't want to hunt elk with it. You probably could, but I've taken elk with shotgun slug with a 12 gauge. I only if I was probably going to starve to death if I didn't shoot would I do that with a 410 slug. But for a deer, white-tailed deer, it's enough. It's not great, but it's a 410 slug if you've done the work with your shotgun and you have decent sights on it and you can put the rounds where you're aiming. Let's say a fist-sized group at whatever distance you're shooting that deer at. If you put that behind the shoulder, a 410 slug will be enough. So for deer and down, 410 slug is enough. But going back to the size and weight, a lot of what you might get is small game. Now, if we talk about, a good healthy source of calories in a lot of locations, waterfowl. Now, normal times, grid up, you have to use non-toxic shot for waterfowl. But if those laws no longer apply, one of the classic things for waterfowl was number 6 lead shot. If you look at the old shotgunning manuals before steel shot, number 6 lead shot was great for waterfowl. And if you were talking about survival, you probably don't want to shoot that waterfowl on the wing. You're not worried about sporting, you're worried about living and surviving. So you'd probably wait till the duck was on the water and then you would shoot it in the head and neck like you would a turkey. If you're going to shoot, let's say, grouse, waterfowl, whatever the small game bird, which is plentiful, it may be a robin for you because you haven't eaten all day and a robin is what you see. For that, a 410 is perfectly adequate. And yeah, if you shot it with a 12 gauge, it would be more pellets, but it wouldn't be any more dead. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the world's best wing shooter, but I shoot a little bit off the wing. I shoot a little bit of clays and stuff like that and birds. I've competed in sporting clays. You definitely have an advantage shooting stuff out of the air, birds out of the air, even small birds, with a 12 gauge versus a 20 versus a 410. But if that animal is stationary and you're picking your shot because you don't want to waste ammo, then a 410 is perfectly adequate. And the duck or the, sage grouse or rough grouse or whatever it is not going to be more dead because you shot it with a 12 gauge and with a 410. If it's stationary, you should be at a reasonable range just as effective with a 410. And you get to carry more shells, which if you extrapolate that out into time and survival means more birds because you can carry more ammo. If you're talking about you're just going out for a day, it doesn't really matter because you're going to carry enough shells for that day. But you're talking about a long-term moving around scenario, you can carry more ammo with the 410. And for small game, which is often a better way to get calories than large game, because if you're in a situation where you have to move, and let's say you do shoot a deer and you can't stay in that location, Well, you kind of wasted a lot of meat because you can only take what you can carry. And if you're in that scenario, you're probably carrying pretty close to a max load anyway with your gun, your ammo, and your water, and your shelter, and your water purification. All that stuff adds up, right? There's a limit to how much you can carry. So if you shoot a deer, how much of that are you really going to be able to use if you're in a scenario where you must go? You can't stay there for 3 or 4 days and eat on a deer. Even if it's cold weather and the meat's not going to spoil, you can only carry so much. You're probably not going to have a time to preserve it. So in those kind of scenarios, the small game is going to be your more logical choice, your better choice, because it's more plentiful and you aren't going to waste it, right? You shoot a duck, you eat half now and eat half later, you're going to be okay. So for that, the 410 makes a lot of sense. So what are some major drawbacks to the 410? There are a few. It's expensive. You might think because it's small, it's cheap. It's the most expensive of the common gauges. It's more expensive, unless you find some crazy sale, it's more expensive than 20, and it's more expensive than 12. So you're not saving any money on it. You're only saving cost in weight of ammo. You're not saving cost in actual, fiat currency equivalent of ammo. So it's expensive. That's a major thing. And you're spending more money for less. It's kind of the reason why I don't see the point of the 380, because this is just a tangent. But versus 9mm, you can get a similar size gun at 9mm, and it's a more powerful, more effective round that costs less. Why would I spend more money for a less effective round? I don't get it. But the 410 is kind of the same thing in that arena. The only real advantage, it's less powerful and it's more expensive, is the weight of the ammo and the size of the ammo, right? Even if they weighed the same, which they don't, a box of 410 is a lot smaller than a box of 12 gauge. Just go pick some up next time you're at Walmart. A box of 410 is a lot smaller, even if you got rid of the weight. So, there's a limit. Usually packs are measured in liters, like a 65-liter pack or whatever. Well, you can carry a lot more of the 410, even if weight was not a consideration. So the size of the ammo is it's a lot less bulky. If we talk about for defense, if you talk about a purpose-built defensive load, I think a pretty standard, even when I was young, before all these newfangled defensive 410 loads, it was 5 pellets of triple alt buck. Triple alt buck is 36 caliber. You're probably looking at around 1,600 feet a second. That's a lot more than most handguns. Even you're like, I'm a 45 guy. Well, look at the actual stopping power of 5 rounds, 36 caliber lead round balls of triple alt buck in a 410 load out of a proper shotgun, not a tourist raging judge or whatever. But look at the effectiveness of that one round of 410 triple alt buck at shotgun velocities. That's a lot more effective than even a very effective handgun. So you can get mad at that if you want, but it just is. So I think for defense, it's plenty effective. Is it as good as a, standard 12 gauge 9 pellet double alt buck? No, but 5, because you can't stack buckshot side by side really in a 410, 5 rounds of triple alt buck or 5 pellets of triple alt buck, that's still pretty impressive for the little baby 410. So I think, for what you use it for self-defense in a lot of common scenarios, 5 pellets of triple alt buck is plenty for defense. So I think for defense, it checks that box. It's decent. I'm not going to pretend it's a 20 gauge. I'm not going to pretend it's a 12 gauge because one of my preferred go-to loads is, number 4 buck. And you're looking with a 3-inch 12 gauge, you're looking at 41 pellets of number 4 buck. I'm not going to pretend it's the same or on par with that, but it's enough for defense, I think, at reasonable ranges. And whatever that range is for you depends on whatever distance. Let's use a pie plate. You can keep an acceptable number of pellets on that pie plate with you out of your shotgun. So the range may vary for you and your shotgun and your choke and all that stuff, but you get the idea. I think for defense, for most people, it would be enough. If we're talking about survival, 410 is going to be less common than 12 or 20 gauge. 12 gauge is going to be the most popular, but 20 gauge is a close second. 410 is not nearly as common. It's still fairly common. It's not like you're trying to find, 284 Winchester, in in the middle of the apocalypse. But 410 is not super common, so you lose a little bit on that compared to the other shotgun gauges. One other advantage, we talked about the weight of the ammo, the weight of the 410. Now, this is not the case all the time. A lot of shotgun companies are just cheap and they'll use the same size frame for a bunch of different gauges. But if you can get a true purpose-built, small framed polymer stock 410, those can be quite light. If you're talking about a full-length, long barrel wood stock 410, it's still not going to be that light. But if you're talking about like a youth model, even if you're not a youth, but a youth model polymer stocked 410, that's a good lightweight, handy option. So not only are you going to save size and weight on the ammo, but on the gun itself. And that can add up. Ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. Now, am I about to, switch out my Mossberg my Mossberg 590S Van Comp as my go-to survival long gun if I have no caveats for a 410? No, I'm not about to do that. I'm not saying that you should do that. But what I'm saying is that it has a lot of advantage, and it's really, I think, underrepresented and underdiscussed in the survival gun arena because it's not as tactical as, a lever-action 4570. But I'll tell you what, I don't care how expensive or Guccified or how much M-Lock and black multicam you've thrown on your lever-action 4570, it's a cool gun. It's going to get a lot of Instagram likes. But if I'm trying to survive the end of the world and I don't have any caveats, and you throw down an old beat-up pump-action 410 with an assortment of shells, slugs, buckshot, some of the more specialized defensive loads, birdshot, number 6 shot, some good turkey loads, some light target loads, I'm going to take that over the 4570. It's a lot more versatile of an option. So I think it's underrepresented in the survival discussion. And I wanted to kind of discuss it with you today to say that it does have some real advantages. One of the big advantages people talk about with the 22 is if you got a bug out on foot, you can carry a lot of ammo. Well, you can't carry nearly as much 410 ammo, but if that is a consideration, if you think that, your bug out location is 200-300 miles away and you live in a city and you don't get out in the first 5 minutes, you're better to bug out, a year early than a 1 minute too late, because as soon as you get stuck in gridlock traffic and that gridlock never moves anymore, that's where your car is going to be in perpetuity. So if you think you might have to walk several hundred miles on foot and you want the versatility of a shotgun, in that scenario, which is for a lot of people probably more common than you might think, especially east of the Mississippi, the 410 makes a lot of sense. So don't discount it because it's small. It's still a shotgun. It's still got not as much, but a lot more versatility than most other weapons. Not as much as a 12 gauge, but it's got a lot of versatility. And it's got, where it shines is the versatility paired with the mobility. It's more mobile than some of the other gauges if you got to, hoof it on your Lamborghinis. So it does have some advantage there. So at least consider it. I'm not saying you should go that route. I'm not saying that you should throw away all your other guns and have a pump action 410 or a semi-auto 410 and that's all you need. I'm not saying that. But it is an option. And one thing I'll throw out there, like all the other shotguns, they're easily reloadable. You keep the holes, you can reload them. So talking about weight, you could carry 1,000 primers pretty easily, shotgun primers for the 410, and you can load those by hand, right? You can load those with not even a whole reloading press. You can reload those pretty simply if you want to, with as long as you have powder, or you can even reload them with black powder if it's a pump action shotgun. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, you can make your own powder. As long as you have decent primers, you can make the powder, or also powder doesn't weigh that much and 410 doesn't take a lot of powder, and you can reload it with all kinds of stuff. One of the glories of the shotgun, you can reload it with pretty much anything you can get in there. Rocks, pebbles, pea gravel, BBs for a BB gun, right? You can reload the shotgun shell with that. You can use, an old cotton shirt or an old rag for wadding, and you can use a piece of cardboard stamped out for the overshot wad. That's what a lot of the old shotgun shells used to have, and you can reload those shells I don't know how many times. I've never reloaded a shotgun shell so much that I couldn't reload it again unless I messed up resizing it or something. and got it stuck in the press and damaged it. But as far as like just shooting it, I've never shot one so much that I couldn't load it again. I'm sure it could happen, but you get the idea. You could even, carry 1,000 primers, and when you get to where you're going, as long as you have something you can shoot out of that shotgun shell, it's still better than nothing. It's still better than whatever the stupid post-apocalyptic shows would have on there, a crossbow. It's still better than that. You got a lot better rate of fire than a crossbow has, right? A lot more power. So anyway, just some thoughts on that. So, don't discount the 410. And I guess that reloading hastily in the field of shotgun shells can be your tactical tip of the day. Your tactical verse of the day, one that I posted for some of the guys today. I have seen the wicked in great power. As part of, I'm going to read a little bit more of it. Wait on the Lord and keep his way, and he shall exalt you to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, you shall see it. I have seen the wicked in great power, and spreading himself like a native green tree. You might look around and see evil in power. That's nothing new, right? This psalm was written a long, long time ago. Psalms and Proverbs were written a long time ago. This is nothing new. Evil people get power. They seek power. They're greedy for power. And you may see evil in power, but if you're in Christ, right, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. Consider that your second tactical verse of the day. So remember, if you're with Christ, you're on the winning side. And things may get crazy. It may not be an easy battle. You may go through trials and tribulations. In fact, Jesus says you will go through tribulation. You will go through trials. But fight to the finish. Stay in there. And remember that, Jesus wins. Read Revelation. Anyway, with that, guys, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.